program directors. Is it one or two? Two, okay, program directors. Chairperson of the Fuel Industry Association of South Africa, Uba Ubhengu. I-captains the-industry, zonke sectors. Bona zonke zikhona apha ne-British Petroleum ikhona. Ayilifuni eli gama, ifuna ndithi yi-BP. Ndingathi i-British Petroleum, but it's British Petroleum. Ndibonile ukuba kone-engine apha. Kodwa ke mna ndiyayazi uba yathengiswa. Yes, it was sold to Vivo now. But ndiva apha kusathethwa nge-engine, ndithi hayi bo yathengiswa mos engine. It was sold long time ago. It's now Vivo. But it's fine, it's fine. Team yakuthi, team DMPR is here. You are going to notice that we're here in numbers because we want to have a sense of what the industry is doing. And distinguished guests, let me express my appreciation to FIASA, I'm moving with times, for convening this important meeting. Let me tell you why is it important. Let me register this at the beginning, that at least I have a sense of an industry now. Okay, my complaint has always been, this industry doesn't talk as an industry. They're talking as competitors. At least now I have a sense that there is an industry. One voice, okay? One voice, one future, sustainable industry. And if you can internalize that, you are going to go very far. There are issues that you deal with as companies, but there are things that affect you as a sector. And the more you talk as a sector, the better you become. This Imbizo comes at a very critical period for the petroleum sector, both globally and domestically. The ongoing conflict in the Middle East has once again reminded us that energy security cannot be taken for granted. I'm going to go with Kwabs here, one of my advisors, to the Strait of Hormuz, to open up the Strait of Hormuz. Now, though those events are occurring 1,000 miles away, they continue to affect our prices. They affect supply chains, they affect investment decisions, and they affect economic stability across the globe. It's a small strait. It's called the Strait of Hormuz. I love it. It's a small strait. You see, you know, if you can use just that strait to impact on the globe, it means you have power in your hands. Before we talk to the consequences that affect us directly and indirectly, the first thing is that somebody has some power that is taken for granted, and it cannot be taken for granted. And we're not immune from these developments, that this small strait affects the world and it affects us. The disruption of global energy supply chains has contributed to increased volatility in natural fuel markets and place pressure on fuel importing countries, including our own country. A lot of pressure, because it depends who you are for your cargo to be allowed through the strait. People take it for granted, they don't understand it, but it is quite important for us. I'm going to talk about something called refining capacity and the role it should play in the industry. Yet, despite this challenge, South Africa has maintained supply fuel supply stability. Thank to the sector for that. At least you work together to ensure that there is stability throughout this crisis. And one of the things that we have tried to talk against is panic communication, where people are predicting that there will be no diesel next week, there will be no petrol. No, wait. That is not your space. Allow the industry to deal with that space the way they did it. The fact that we are importing processed products, mainly from the Middle East, but it's also an advantage that we can actually diversify our sources of supply. And the crisis has informed us to diversify it. It's a must that we must diversify. And number two, the fact that the industry works with us, we must thank you for working with us. But one of the most important things is that we must confront the question of the areas of concern. When we remain troubled by incident where some operators increase fuel prices ahead of official price increase. You go to a power station, to a petrol station, you discover that the price of diesel has been increased in anticipation of the increase next week. And while these actions were limited and minority of participants, they undermine the public confidence and tarnish the reputation of the border industry. So we must work with the industry to eliminate those behaviors because they impact on the reputation of the sector. Not just the state. We publish the prices, but people put their own prices up there, and the industry is quiet about it. The industry must talk to those issues. Compliance with regulatory requirements is not optional, it's a fundamental to maintain public trust and ensuring level of playing field for all participants. Because if we allow few participants to deviate, we are actually destabilizing the sector. The alteration of fuel products, particularly illegal blending of diesel with paraffin, is prevalent in the industry. It happens here, there, and we must deal with it. And the state cannot do anything about it on its own. But working with the sector, we can deal with it. If the sector is part of removing adulteration from the sector, it is not going to happen in the sector. The criminal activity undermine the rule of law, distort the markets, they damage the equipment, they compromise consumer confidence, and poses significant risk to our economy and national security. So the sector must work with the state. It's not an option. We must work together to deal with these issues. Government continues to work closely with law enforcement agencies to combat this illicit trade. However, we cannot succeed alone. The industry cooperation remains essential in identifying offenders. And we can deal with them when we identify them. This Imbizo provides us with an opportunity to engage frankly about the future of our industry and collectively shape the petroleum sector that remains secure, competitive, sustainable, responsive in changing energy landscape. One of the things that I want to caution you on, July 1st is a date, it's quite important, but never develop your policy purely on aspirations. Deal with the realities that confront the sector. As you change, make that change to be incremental and be systematic. Don't look for a big bang change in one day. Because if you do that, you're going to collapse the sector. I'm a coal fundamentalist. Okay. When Sasol does coal destoning, I go there to see it, that how is stone removed from coal? Because it harbors the future of coal processing into oil. Now, if we don't look into that, we underestimate that, we are going to pay the price. Let me talk to a little bit to the question of the importance of refining. I know that somebody accused me in Parliament last week that, listen, you allow engine to close their refining capacity. You allowed PP and Shell to do that. And I said to them, actually, there are two things that are involved there. The first one is overly dependent on the private sector for managing the risk of the country. You don't do that. The state must be involved. And this state, there's one thing different between the state and the private company. Private companies are businesses. They run numbers and see what is profitable, what makes the best sense, while the state must never be risk averse. Each state must take the risk and appreciate that once that risk is taken and that market matures, the private sector will walk in and compete it away from you. And that is the role of the state. And that's why even DFIs must never be risk averse. They must take risks. When the market matures, they must appreciate that private banks will compete with them and take away the opportunity. And that is the role of the state. So, when the state invests in refining capacity, it is actually doing two things. It is investing in refining capacity. You see now, our refining capacity, if you take the two refineries and Sasol, they give us security for 40% of our need. The rest is dependent on imported processed goods. And that must change. There must be a balance in that issue. That's why the state is committed with limited resources to revitalize SAPREF and make it operational again. We are committed to actually opening up the Petro SA refining capacity, and that capacity will take actual refining, internal refining, to a different level than 40%. And that is important for risk management. It reduces, it mitigates the risk against the country. Because you import processed goods from the Middle East, there is war in the Middle East, the risk goes up immediately. Crude oil, you get it in the continent, you get it in the American valley, and you bring it here. But if you don't have refining capacity, that doesn't help you much. It's limited. So, the conventional fuels will continue to play an important role in our economy for decades to come. Now, apparently, one of my kids is having a hybrid car. Hybrid. Why do you take a hybrid car and not buy an electrical vehicle? He says, no. Electric vehicles will come, but hybrid is better because it gives you options. Gives you option when you don't have time to charge, because to charge a battery takes you an hour. When filling a tank takes you 10 minutes. So young people make calculations. This is the better option, and then I better have both of them. When there's enforcement of electric vehicles, I'm having the option of electric vehicles. But I also have internal combustion engine in my car. It has both. That is better. And I think that is going to be the most prominent sector in coming years, rather than clear electrical vehicles. So I'm advising the industry not to plan just on aspirations. Deal with the material conditions that you must confront. The biofuel, within this context, biofuel represent an important opportunity. We're having one experiment in Bothaville where we're experimenting with biofuel. If it works, it will be widespread, and I think the industry is beginning to look into biofuel broadly as an alternative. And the crisis actually has heightened the need and the demand for us to move with speed to biofuels so that our internally developed technologies must replace overly dependent on imported technologies. The Minister of Agriculture is quite supportive of biofuels. When that happens, it gives us confidence that we'll have feedstock available required to support the industry for growth. So if that ministry want to take them to different plants, if you have plans on biofuels, please tell us, we can visit them, want to see them, so that we don't theorize about biofuel. And therefore, the publication of regulated biofuel price last year marked an important milestone in providing regulatory certainty and creating conditions conducive for investment. We have published that. If you are not happy, please tell us. You see, please tell us, because life and policy is about ongoing engagement. It's not about state imposing its will. It is also the industry engaging the state that, listen, this is too stiff, this is affordable, this we can do, this we can't do, so that we adjust our policies to the demands of the industry, because we have one objective: economic growth. That's why this sector must monitor its contribution to the GDP. Very minimal. It can be bigger. If we make breakthroughs in drilling for gas and oil, I can tell you that the contribution of this sector will be much bigger in the GDP of the country. But it's something else. The Petroleum Products Bill forms part of a broader program to reform and modernize downstream petroleum sector. The bill seeks to strengthen regulation, support economic transformation, promote cleaner fuel standards, improve market efficiency, provide greater certainty for investors. The legislation is currently progressing through the cabinet processes before being submitted to Parliament. So there is still an opportunity for you to influence that bill to be what will work for the sector, rather than waiting for it and then complain. I want an industry that is engaging rather than an industry that is complaining. A complaining industry is not helpful because you chase your tail all the time. They're not happy with that, they're not happy with that, they're not happy with that, you chase your tail. But if the industry engages you, it's a better sector for you because it helps you develop a framework that fits the industry. So, see, I want FIASA to spend time in my office and impose sometimes some of the meetings on me. I'm always boasting that I'm one of the most available ministers in the government. If you want to meet me, you meet me. If you don't want to meet me, you don't meet me. If you don't want to meet me, I go to you. So, similarly, the implementation of the Upstream Petroleum Resource Development Act marks a milestone in the development of the oil and gas sector. It's a sector now, it's not an appendage of mining. For all the years, we made it an appendage of mining, we're removing it and make it a sector, a standalone sector. So it depends on you in this room to make it a vital. So you have a responsibility there. Whereas the publication of regulation took longer than originally anticipated, we are pleased to report that extensive stakeholder submissions have been fully considered and that the regulations are now ready for publication and implementation. Together, the Act and its regulation will establish a dedicated regulatory framework for the upstream petroleum industry. Ladies and gentlemen, Energy security remains one government foremost priority, and the petroleum industry remains a strategic pillar of our economy. You may underplay your role, look into the future, I think that oil will decline. You know, as a coal fundamentalist, many people have been telling us that coal is dirty, it has no role, but I looked at the last year's assessment. 1.2 growth globally of coal demand marked a very important signal that coal, fossil fuel are going to be around for some time as we transition to something new that we are looking at. But Chinese have given us an advice there that one of the things we must never do is to dismantle a technology you have in anticipation for future good technology. Check the future technology, prove its resilience, prove its reliability, and step by step move to it. You don't dismantle what you have because you are looking forward to get something new, something cleaner, something that can be accepted. Unfortunately, our standards are linked to EU. For example, I was telling the Minister of Finance, say, we're the only country with a carbon tax. We're the only country outside of the EU. We're the only. US doesn't have it. China doesn't have it. India doesn't have it. Middle East doesn't have it. We are the only country with carbon tax linked to Europe. Europe accepts our carbon tax, but they still give us their own framework of carbon tax, and therefore our people get taxed twice in dealing with Europe. I said to Enoch, we are ahead of our time. We're steaming ahead. We are going to harm ourselves because we want to look good. And this is not a beauty contest. It's a reality. We must always accept that. Now, in 2024, the department commissioned a comprehensive vulnerability assessment of South African strategic petroleum stock. You talked about it a lot in the panel. The study identified several areas requiring urgent attention, including the need to strengthen withholding arrangements and increase domestic refining capacity. That is the only way we can actually our strategic stock today is crude oil strategic stock. Now, what we're looking in response to, we have developed a draft strategic petroleum stocks policy, which is now ready for cabinet consideration. We're making provision for both crude oil strategic stock and processed petroleum strategic stock. To look into the future, the policy proposes mixed stockholding under the Southern African National Petroleum Company, SANPEC, which maintains strategic crude oil and refined product. So we want to have a balance. At this point in time, we're keeping crude strategic stock as crude oil. Now we're saying it must be balanced. It must be 60 days of both crude and processed petroleum. 60 days provision. This represents a major step forward, strengthening South Africa's resilience in island view. The sector must listen to this one. Island view, there's a big fight. We're given 15% of island view. We have accepted it. We graduate to 20, we graduate to 30. We've accepted that because the public sector cannot be totally eliminated from fuel storage. It must have a role in the fuel storage so that I was telling my colleagues in Parliament, Uguti, you know, a weak state is an irritation for the private sector. The private sector wants a strong state, a state that facilitates, that regulates, a state that contributes to the change, that facilitates change. If it is weak, it's an irritation to the private sector. Sometimes private sector, when you listen to them, you think that they hate regulation. What they hate most is a state that cannot regulate anything. that state is an irritation to the private sector. A strong state is important for the private sector to flourish. So that is what we're working on. The geopolitical disruption will continue. We continue to witness, have exposed the risk of associated with excessive dependence on refined petroleum products that are imported. That goes with a big risk, particularly with geopolitics. We looked at Russia, Ukraine. We're now looking into the Middle East. One day we will be a target of that attack ourselves, though we're not ready for it. But we must always prepare for it. If we're serious about improving our energy security, reducing our vulnerability to external shocks, and strengthening our economic security, then we must accelerate exploration and development of our own oil and gas reserves. Total says we're waiting for environmental licenses to drill in the west, in the Orange River Basin down there. They want to drill there. We have a duty to work with Total, talk to the TFFE to accelerate the process of environmental licenses. Because we need that oil, we need the gas, we need regulation for shale gas. We need regulation for shale gas so that we can actually lift the moratorium on shale gas. Those who are interested amongst you can go and drill for shale gas. And technology has improved. We no longer have the fear of water and breaking the rock. Modern technology make it efficient to access shale gas. And we need those regulations to lift the moratorium. Company will show their interest. Liquefied petroleum gas market is quite important. The prices of paraffin has proven the importance of liquefied petroleum gas. Please, let's look at making paraffin more affordable. It's very expensive. It is heavily used by the poor, but the price of paraffin increases at a higher pace than any other issue that is regulated. Because it's not regulated, we must look into that and modernize our pricing of paraffin. As we chart the future of the South African petroleum sector, we must also think beyond our borders. South Africa occupies a strategic position within SADC. Our infrastructure, logistic capabilities, and market scale places us in a unique position to serve the regional energy hub. Obviously, taxation is a major issue there. And we can talk to Enoch. We must engage him. We must not walk away from him. Minister Kotongwana is the Minister of Finance. The sector must meet him. If he doesn't agree this week, let's meet him next week. If he refuses, let's try the other week. The sector must persist on meeting the Minister of Finance on tax issues. In conclusion, let us use this Imbizo to identify practical solutions, strengthen partnership, unlock investment, build petroleum sector that is secure, competitive, transformed, and capable of supporting South Africa's developmental objective. Now, you see, I have a weakness of making observation on everything. I looked at the panel that sat here. There was one female. And I said, this sector is behind. If in 2026, in a panel like that, only one female is present, something is wrong with the sector. I was a little bit comfortable to see that you were surrounded by black skins. At least that means there is some progress we're making. What is described as catered deployment is actually giving opportunity to black South Africans who historically were excluded from the economy to participate in the economy. And I'm comfortable with the progress we're making in allowing them to participate, hold executive positions, run companies. To me, that is transformation that we need into the future. And every structure of the industry must reflect the demographics of the country in the long term. So, working together as government and industry, we can ensure that the future of energy mobility is not something we merely react to, but something we actively shape. Let me appreciate the opportunity to talk to you as making an input to a discussion that will take you more than just listening to me. Please discuss these issues, talk to them, criticize my input as well. I'm happy that there are no questions directed at me.